Animation is often considered overused or unnecessary, but if implemented well, can enhance the user experience and maintain an effective dialogue. In this video, you will learn how to use Spark effects to animate components in response to user or system events. This is the employee portal application that you use to create application states. In this video, I will show you how to make the login panel shake if the user submits invalid authentication information. Those of you who have used the Macintosh OS have probably experienced the shaking dialog if you have ever incorrectly logged into your computer. The animation is subtle but very effective at conveying a message with motion rather than text or voice. Let me take a minute to define the term animation in regards to Flex development. Animation is the change in a property value of a component over time. For instance, if you increase the value of the X property of a panel container, it will move to the right. If you increase the width and height values of an image over time, the image will grow. If you decrease the alpha property of a text control, then the text will fade. The Flex framework provides two packages of effects. The MX effects are in the mx.effects package and only work with subclasses of the UI component class. Spark effects are in the spark.effects package. You should use the Spark effects over the MX effects since they will work on any object, not just those in the UI component subclasses. The Spark effects are based on an Animate superclass. This code shows that you give the Animate instance and ID property value to control the animation with ActionScript. Then you define the ID of the object that you want to animate using the target property and binding syntax. Remember that the definition of an animation is the change in a property over time. You define the amount of time for the animation using the duration property, which by default is 1000 milliseconds. Nested within the Animate instance, you create simple motion path objects for each property that you want to animate. For each property, you define the starting and ending values or an increment of change, as seen here with the value by setting of the width property. There are many effects in the spark.effects package that are basically wrappers around the Animate class. They expose the specific properties to animate and create the simple motion path objects that the Animate class expects. You can create your own custom effects by extending the Animate class, but the ones in the spark.effects package handle the majority of the effects that you will use most frequently. Spark effects are divided into these 5 categories. In this video, I will focus on the property and transform effects. The other categories of effects work similarly but are outside the scope of this training. I have searched my local help for the fade effect in the ActionScript 3.0 language and component reference. This first result is for the MX fade effect. I'm clicking the back button to select the Spark fade effect instead. I am now clicking on the spark.effects package so that you can see all of the available effects. You will define the effects in the declarations block. Effects are non-visual classes that are applied to visual objects. You give each effect an ID property which you use to control when it plays. Now let's start coding the login panel's shaking animation. Here is the starter file for the application, and I have located the login panel here. You can see that it has an ID property set to login. I'm locating the declarations block and then instantiating a move effect that I'm assigning an ID property value of shake to. The target for this shaking effect is the login panel, so I'm adding a target property with a binding to the login instance. I want the animation to move just slightly back and forth horizontally, so I am assigning the X by property with a value of 20 pixels. The XBY property directs the target to move the defined number of pixels horizontally relative to its current position. Note that if I were to target more than one object with this effect, I would change the target property to targets and add array brackets inside of the curly braces. Then the IDs would be listed with commas between them. I am undoing this last change since I only have one target object in this case. To play an effect, you use the play method for the effect, which is inherited by all subclasses of the Animate class. In the user or system event handler that will trigger the animation, you reference the effect's ID property value, in this case the shake instance, and then call the play method. Of course, if you have more than one line of code for your event handler, you can always create a function and play the animation from there. I have located the login button control in the login panel container that I'm animating. I'm adding the click event and typing shake.play for the handler. When I save the file and run the application and then click on the button, you can see that the login panel moves just slightly, exactly 20 pixels to the right. Later I will show you how to make the login screen shake back and forth. For now though, I don't want this animation to always play when the user clicks the login button. A user should only see the shake animation when the username and password are incorrect. If the username and password are correct, then the user should be presented with the main portal page. Back on the login button control, I am removing the shake.play method call from the event handler and replacing it with a call to the check login function, which I will create next. I'm scrolling up to find the script comment and then creating a script block. Next, I'm creating a private function named check login that returns a void return type. You can see here that the username and password text controls have ID values of username and password respectively. Within the function, I'm creating a conditional if statement with its associated parentheses for the condition and the curly braces for the action. In the condition, I am checking whether the username dot text value entered into the username text input control is equal to the string flex4. I want to only authenticate the user if they enter flex4 for the username and gumbo for the password, so I'm adding two ampersands for an and statement in the condition. Next, I'm checking whether the password dot text property value entered into the password text input control is equal to the string gumbo. Here is the states block that you created in an earlier exercise. Remember that there are two states, login state and portal state. The portal state shows the main application display. If the user properly authenticates, I want to switch the application state to the portal state using the current state property of the component, which in this case is the main application. Within the condition, I am assigning the current state property a value of portal state. Now I am adding an else statement to the conditional statement in order to set the actions for the application when the user does not properly authenticate. Here I'm telling the application to call the shake effects play method. I'm saving the file and running the application and clicking on the login button. You can see that the animation does move the login panel 20 pixels to the right. When I type flex4 for the username and gumbo for the password, the application displays the portal state. Next, I will show you how to string effects together to create the full back and forth shake effect. To apply multiple effects at once, you use composite effects. The parallel composite effect causes all effects to run simultaneously, while the sequence composite effect causes effects to run sequentially. You surround all of your effects with one of the composite effects. The target of the effect can be defined on the individual effect or on the composite effect. You can even nest composite effects to generate more complex animations. You will learn how to do that in the next video. For now, I'm nesting the move effect within a sequence effect block. I am moving the ID property and the target property from the move effect into the sequence block. This new composite effect will now contain the entire shake movement. Next, I'm copying the move effect and pasting it 7 more times. To every other move effect, I am making the XBY property's value negative. When I save the file and run the application and click on the Login button, you can see that the Login panel now moves back and forth in a shaky motion. However, this shaky motion moves rather slowly since by default an animation takes 1,000 milliseconds to play and I have 8 move effects. Lastly, I will show you how to use the duration property of the effect to speed up the rate at which the Login panel shakes. Doing this will give the animation a more emphatic gesture. I'm adding the duration property to the sequence effect and setting its value to 20 milliseconds. When I save the file and run the application and click on the Login button, you can see that the shake effect animates more vigorously. For your next step, work through the exercise titled Animating Components with Effects.